Hello, everyone, and hello, Ilonka. I am
Thank you, Rosalind.
I'm so happy to have you here. And I just asked Ilonka if she would introduce herself because to me, she is so much bigger than best-selling author and all the incredible things that she is are not enough to describe her. So, will you start and tell us why you're here to talk about the quantum?
First of all, thank you. Thank you, Rosalind, for inviting me here. And also thank you for having the amazing conversation that we had on our Visionary Voices Unleashed
Yes, this
podcast.
is part two, everybody, and we are going to send you part one. So if you're just joining us for part two, be sure to check part one. And I
Yeah.
think we're going to put it, Ilanka, have them go through your YouTube would be the best rather than put it on ours. Would that be the
Okay.
best?
We can work the
Yeah,
details
we'll
out
work
for
that
sure.
out. Yeah.
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
So, the question you asked me to introduce myself, I have to be very honest, it, it's been part of the mission of figuring out who I am and really, and I think it's an invitation to us all.
Mhm,
And every time that I thought, okay, this is it, this is who I am.
mhm,
Now I'm truly stepping into the world as me. And then I realized that the conditioning that we've had as human beings here on this planet is so big and it is so influential that we hardly realize that who we think we are is it's so much more
mhm.
than
Yeah.
or who we really are is so much more than
Mhm.
who we think we are.
So
And
do you think well, I want you to say more so they know a little of your credentials, but
yeah,
I don't want to skip that. So be sure we say that. But I
yeah.
need to respond to what you just said. That's so wonderful. What if it's because we're all coming from the personal rather than the quantum? And when we try to come from the personal, it's ever changing.
Mm.
You're older, you have new thoughts, you have new experience, you're younger, you have this experience that changes you. But when we go from yet what we haven't defined as the quantum, then we're not in the same struggle with who am I really,
Yeah.
personally, really. What do you think about that?
I think what you're saying, and I love how you've worded that in your books, the personality mind and then our true I. And it's that recognition that I see it. So this is real. We are part biology. And
Mhm,
a lot of people that are, sometimes want to say, oh, that's not important. It is, because we cannot have that experience without our bodies.
mhm.
So it is honoring that we are part biology, but there's so much more. We are also part quantum, and they are inseparable.
But what
And
if we're 100% quantum in an embodiment of the body? What would that look like in your
so,
experience?
so that's why I said it. Actually, it's all together. So you can't be one without the other. You
Hmm.
cannot be we are quantum beings, but once we come here, so
Hmm.
that you and I can call you Rosalind and you can call me Ilonka, then we are both, and they are equally important,
Hmm.
because without one, we cannot express the other,
Hmm.
except that through our eons of history, we have unlearned the quantum part of us.
Yes.
And that's
So,
why it's so important to really help understand and allow that part of us
mhm,
to come through in a way that uniquely resonates with who you are.
mhm. So what do we mean by the quantum? Let's start there.
So to me, the quantum is about I write it in the book. The one word that I found most describes it is from the African, ancient African word Ubuntu, where they really describe, I am who I am because of who we are.
Oh,
And that
oh, let's,
sense of,
oh, ooh, let's sit with that. Oh, do you mind my interrupting you? I just want to
I
presence
don't
that.
know, no,
Oh, I am who I am because of who we are. Is that what you said? I
yes.
am who I am because of who we are. What if we all take a moment and get beyond the good and bad? Some of us, when we go to we think of politics or this person we favor or that person we disfavor. But what if we go to life, the life that is everyone?
Yeah.
And I am who I am because of life, rather than the personality of this one or that one. How does that affect you, Ilonka?
It has an opening, an energy of opening. And I think that's where the invitation to our humanity is for us to
Mm.
open up more.
Yes,
We have been kind of closing in.
yes,
Um, Fear is often is an energy often
yes,
that
yes,
has been, I would say has been used, but we've also internalized it ourselves without knowing it. And it holds us back because
yes,
fear of the unknown keeps us in our what we know and what we can interpret and what we have control over and makes us feel safe.
yeah. Keeps
But
us
it's
little, right?
I'm
Keeps
sorry,
us little, keeps us small.
it keeps us small, and that is the scary part about us expanding, is that it does require us to step into the quote unquote unknown.
Mm,
But what helps is understanding that we are also part of that unknown.
mm,
And at a deep level, at our soul level,
mm,
the soul knows.
mm,
And that's why I love what you say is that there's a lot of us that go like, oh, the personality, that is not important. And I say, no, the personality is important because when 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 somebody speaks to you, you bring it in your own unique way, which is an integration of your soul energy and the experience you've had as this person walking this earth.
absolutely,
Your
100%.
soul gives you that extra energy of, you walking the earth and wherever,
Mhm,
um, not only in this lifetime. So
mhm.
that's the totality. But both are important. And it's
So
not either or.
yes, absolutely. And even if it were 100% quantum, we would not know that because we come with an embodiment and a personality that interprets everything. We would not know because we live with this developed creation that is our personality and it's real to
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
This book, Quantum Rebel, a visionary leader's blueprint to fulfill your soul's deepest calling and impact humanity.
Yeah.
How did you come to write this book?
Actually, I think the book has been writing me throughout my whole life. And I it becomes more and more clear. Like yesterday, as it's unfolding, like yesterday, it's really fun. I'll go back to the book, but yesterday I was watching a movie with my mom. I, uh, Let me think of the name. Now I'm like you. I'll tell the name in a little bit, but it was about this
Mhm.
nun in the 18th century who just had this knowing that she came to build an empire of love. Cabrina. She was, and
Mm.
she stood up for for the poor, for the children. And at the highest level, she met the Pope. And she had all this resistance, but she knew that this is what her calling on in this life was.
Yes.
And she didn't exactly know how,
Mm-hmm.
but it that knowing kept her moving forward, and eventually, little by little, formed that what she intended to bring into this world.
Yes.
And it's the
Yeah.
same thing with my book, I would say. you
Yes,
know
you've been a poet for years.
yeah, yeah,
In my words, I didn't look this up. I intended to. I told my husband about you yesterday, and I said I would call her a wordsmith. I've never looked up that word, but Ilonka has, I would say, in my whole life, I've never met anyone who is as precise picking out the word, even in someone else's experience. I
yeah,
found out when she interviewed me the conclusions and the depth with which she hears things, from my perspective, makes you the vehicle to write this book, that the quantum wants us to know more about becoming.
yeah. And that's what I wrote in the book. And I, it's part biographical because it came through me and through my experience. And then it goes into also conceptual because I always say, having the vision, having the thoughts, and being able to tell, what you've learned is important, but then bringing it into reality
Mhm.
so that it becomes a lived experience is really where the rubber meets the road. And that's why I love you, because you operate in that space. It's both, because
Mhm.
that's what changes hearts. And
Yes.
so the book really, in the book, I also talk about the blend, that people ask me, well, why do you call yourself Chindia Ilonka? I said, well, that has a story behind it. I was
Mhm.
born as Ilonka, and Chindia at one point was the artist, was the what you would call the wordsmith, but it was slowly learning to hear these voices and first paint them and then allow them to come through and write them.
Mhm.
And it was always separate. It was Ilonka, and then I would look to and try and listen to what Chindia would say, and merge that somehow.
Mhm.
And with time, it became a blend.
Mhm.
And I write it in the book too, that
Mhm.
when I say we, then it's more imbued with the quantum. And
Mhm.
when I talk about I, it's still, the quantum is there, but it's
Mhm.
more imbued through the person Ilonka that
Yes.
experienced this journey.
Yes, we all have our lens, and
Yeah,
our lens is the eye, but not the big eye, not the true eye. But it is as real as our bodies are,
yeah,
because
yeah,
it's our
yes,
lived experience. And I love how you try to show us what the conceptual looks like, because many seekers are taking notes, but they don't actually know that it has to be their lived experience.
yeah,
And so they write it down, they study, they make the list. And what I like is that in your book, that will be satisfied because there are the 5 of this and the 7 of that. And that part of them, we have to satisfy that, or it leads, the mental leads, if it doesn't get what it needs. So you give them that, and it's a great guidebook, or as you say, blueprint.
mm. A
And
quantum blueprint,
then,
because it
yes,
is different for everyone.
yes, that's right.
Everyone will interpret it from their lived
Through our
experience.
lens. through our personal lens, and there's no other way. What do you think of for someone, and there will be people in this community, and I've been there. I remember, but everything in my life is before Melissa died and after. That's how it is. And before Melissa died, I went to India in 1995 with a group of psychotherapists, and that was exactly the time that scientists were starting to talk about spirituality and the quantum. And my friends were all, not all, but my closest friend that I roomed with, she was into the word, into the research. And my feeling was, that's all nice. I don't even actually know what that means, although I could define it for you. Don't know it in my heart. I just want a better personality, is what I thought. I just want to have less pain, be less obsessed with weight and food, and my daughter, stop judging her. That's what was on my mind. That was my lens. And nobody could convince me otherwise, except that it was a bookmark. I wasn't open at that time, but the fact that I said what I said, I heard it too. And I went, really? All these other people were there for enlightenment and for, learning from the guru. And I was like, I just want to experience life with less depression, less pain, less suffering. And so there are a lot of people out there in this community like I was then. Quantum schwantum, how can you affect, how, how can you make my life better today? And when we left this guru, and we were with him because he's very good with the Western mind, he said, you don't realize how your love for goals hurts you. You don't realize how you're actually talking when you say, I have a goal. You're talking about what you lack. You're really describing what you think you lack. He said, so in the end of the day, we don't know how much fate there is, and we don't really know if we have free choice. Nobody knows. We believe this or we believe that. But he said, at the end of the day, take in, is your day better if you chose everything that happens, or if you're a respondent to the quantum? How does it change your day? What lightens you? And that was actually my entrance into the quantum. Because when I came home, some of you know the stories. I was a psychotherapist at the time, and I had a meeting with a client, and I said these things to her. And afterwards, I would have gone on with this like the rest of the evening. Why did you say that? I don't think she can use it. I don't even know if you believe that. Why did you say that? And I would have repeated it for the rest of the evening. And I said, well, if I don't even agree with it, and I said it, it must be that it was supposed to be said, and I let it go. It was my first experience that I was aware of with letting the rope go, the rope of the tug of war, letting it really 100% letting it go. Must have been she was supposed to hear that. Yesterday, Ilonka's Facebook was suspended. No reason. She never did anything to provoke it. It's the cleanest Facebook you ever saw. It's so gorgeous. Like there would be nothing unethical in this. It happened. If you had gone down the road of, I must have chosen this if this happened, you would have been in pain and maybe come up with some stories about what you could have once done to make this happen, right? But it
Yeah,
happened like the weather. Like
yeah,
it's whatever the weather is. You want to fight it, you'll have a terrible day, right?
yeah,
Or that's what it is, and you move on. And I saw you, I experienced you in the morning when it just happened, like, oh my God, like this happened. And a few hours later, we happened to be in touch, and he was like, well, this is the way it is. And then next steps, the movement, the quantum
yeah,
moves through us personally.
yeah. And I think what you touch on, because you asked me about the quantum, because I think that's a beautiful example, is that in our personality mind, we have, as a human, we have gotten used to, we want certainty,
Mhm.
you know? Tell me A, B, C, D, and tell me how to get to Z, you know? And if Z doesn't happen, then you either told me wrong or something's wrong with me. And in the quantum world doesn't work like that. Life doesn't work like that. But there are you can it's it in that energetic world that we are part of it. We're part certainty and part probability, you know, and we can skew the probabilities in our favor when we get into the because it's what energy is a wave. And when we, you know, and it's figuratively in a way, but when we are aligned with the highest frequency wave that is, you know, allowing to go its natural state of going up and down so that we are alive, when we resonate at that highest level, that's when we can actually skew life into our favor. So, and it's about having every moment these little choices because, and a lot of us, we like, it's important to acknowledge the emotion because when it happened, I was like, you know, it just, I was like,
Yeah,
my breath was gone. I was like, what happened?
it
You
was
know,
a
and
punch.
then
It was one of life's
exactly.
punches. Mhm.
But then it's like, okay, you know, it's like, okay, what do I do now? Breathe through it at this moment. I'm just going to turn it off because I can't figure it out. But if I go down that tailspin of going, oh my goodness, this, what does this mean? I go down that rabbit hole. I just bring the whole, all the probabilities of me moving forward and just letting it be. It just, you know, I create a whole new storyline
Mhm.
that I chose
Mhm.
versus breathing, you know, allowing it to be, sensing and I love how you say, when you talk about the observer, and you say, don't add on to your thoughts. I've been talking to a whole bunch of people. Say, I love how Rosalind says it. Don't add on to your thoughts. Just notice them, and then just keep slowly stepping back and notice them, and then, you know, within a few, the energy and the emotion dissipates, and when it doesn't, you just spend some more time with it.
Mhm.
And what I have learned is it's about being curious. You know?
Mhm.
So I will ask myself, okay, is this some kind of message that I need to get something from here? No,
Mhm.
and in its entirety, probably not. But in its smaller things, like we had it at, you know, it kept me from being in different spaces. I was like, okay, well, maybe I needed to really be. This is about being in somebody else's masterclass. I was like, okay, maybe I just needed to stay in my pure transmission,
It wasn't
bring
for
up my
you.
message.
Life took it over. You were going to join it. I was
Exactly.
influencing you to join it. You said yes to that, and life said no to you, and that's that.
But the thing is,
For them.
it could. So it's that curiosity
Yeah.
because it's not about a definite yes or no, but
Well,
it's
but
can you
but then if it's a no, it doesn't mean no forever. It just means no
exactly in
yesterday. That's
this
it.
moment,
Yeah.
you know, one, it is what it is,
Hmm.
and perhaps there's a sign in there.
Well, it's
So
really
we keep
interesting
walking.
because the talk you couldn't get into was all about yes and no. And and it's kind of interesting because a yes, we've had that about each other's work. We just recent um, collaborators, and there's been a big yes. But sometimes people come across our path and there's a no.
Yeah.
And then for other people, they don't trust the yes and the no. And they go into their heads and they go, well, maybe, and maybe, and maybe, and they want proof before they act. And then that becomes an issue, the maybe and the maybe.
So maybe it's good. What I can share about that part is, and I have because I'm a very visual person. So in the book, I call it I think it's called the growth framework, where you see, because when I went through my own life, going from really feeling unworthy and not belonging and, just not, it was all in here, but that's where it stayed because I always felt like I wasn't good enough. So I wouldn't speak up and I had no role models, didn't understand that actually, what I had inside is beautiful, but I couldn't figure it out myself. But that's part of our path, and so that took, once started the poem bundle, the words came through, I painted. So when I published the poem, when I was like, okay, Ilonka, you've arrived. Now I can step into the world. Now I know who I am. And then I realized that it took me 13 more years and that's why I say it's through my lived experience that these pieces of wisdom started to anchor. Because there is a part where what we call personal development, where we have to move beyond that, the actually working with the personality. That's also important. It's not anything not important. And you can't skip it, because when we feel unworthy, when we don't think we're good enough, those are things we need to address as we grow. But then we do reach a moment where I was like, okay, but now it's different. I don't have low self-esteem anymore. I believe in who I am. I speak my truth. But now, and that's why I started calling it quantum expansion and soul mastery. Because now it is truly, that who you are at your depth is that soul essence. You allow it to be that drive in your life. You allow it more and more to be the voice that shows up in even uncomfortable spaces. But there's also growth in that, and that's where I believe our humanity is right now, is really at a tipping point of recognizing and honoring that, one, we can't do it alone. It's together. That, the more you show up in your authentic voice, and the more I show up and all the others, that together it becomes like an orchestra. And, people start understanding. And I remember many, many years ago, I had, this drawing came out, and there was this bridge, and I just saw myself walking people across the bridge. And it was only many, many, many years after that I realized, that is part of your mission. That is part of our mission, is that, we don't tell people what to do, but we walk with them. And we share through our experience, through our lived experience. Because when you share about Melissa, that takes so much depth to, because you've had to process it, and then to make the choice to say, this has come to me, and now I can help others cross their bridge, to move through their grief if and when they've lost, experienced such deep loss, you know.
Mhm.
And then, but it's not, life is not about just that, but there's other things. People have things in business, and there's things in, growing, raising children. And it's when we come together as a community, that's where we get a tipping point, and really empowering each other to stand up and that's why I call it amplifying our visionary voices,
Mhm.
to have that lived experience. However, sometimes it's scary, because it's not, there's no certainty in that path.
Mhm.
Because if it is, you're not going deep enough. You're
Mhm.
not stepping out
Mhm.
wide enough.
Mhm. Yes. One of the things that I admire so much, admire meaning I value it. It's not admire where you're up here and I'm down there, but I'm noticing um, that what propels you, at least this is how it feels to me, is that you're a visionary. And when it's the quantum, it's for society, it's for you, for me, for us, it's all of us. And that comes to you even when you say, we go side by side, we go together, and then there's the tipping point. I talk about those things too, but enneagrammically, I do self-care first, then I do intimate, then I do the social, the world. And I feel a little bit different stacking for you. And it turns on a force in me that feels like you're my equalizer in that. And um, when you said, oh, you had a physical symptom and you mentioned, oh, I need more self-care. I need to rest, whatever the self-care would be. I don't know if it was food or rest or garden or whatever it was. That would be me noticing that first. That would be where I live, is noticing what I need first. And then, so it's not one or the other is better. It's
No,
that we need them all, and we bring them
exactly.
out in each other. And
Exactly.
it's a turn on. It's not like, oh, first people think self when you're focused on yourself first as one of the three instincts, people have been raised to think that's selfish. But remember the airplane, you put it on yourself first, the mask, then so there is no right or wrong. You would be
No.
looking around who needs help in the airplane, like where can I reach out? And then you get your mask. I'm making that up, but that is a way to describe the three instincts, which are strongest. And we
Mm.
all need each other, and we all need to balance whichever way is our first instinct. Our last instinct is the least that we have an instinct, is the one we need the most in our development.
Mm. And it is all, at least that has been my experience. They all have a place. Not
Yeah.
everybody. Some of us feel called to work at the whole humanity level. Others are called to work, you know, what if I was the parent of the next leader of the free world? I mean, how much power is in that?
Yes.
When I put a limitation on that, like, oh,
I'm
I'm
just a
not going to do
mother. I'm just
special
at
things
home.
in the world, I'm just being a mom.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Yes.
We are all needed, and that's why the diversity and the uniqueness of each of our voices together, that's one of the poems that I have, is that together it becomes an orchestra.
Yes.
you know
Yes.
because that's what people can, that's easy to wrap your mind
Yes.
into.
Yes.
That,
Yeah.
like, it just growing, if we just throw a group of people together and we just kind of do this, you can have a cacophony. But when we are aligned and we feel the soul and
Yes,
that
beautifully
energy of
said.
Ubuntu comes, and that is when everything blends and
Mhm.
each one knows that this is who I am, this is what I came to do in this world, and it's beautiful, you know.
And now we know a little more about what moves you, what drives you, and tell us where you were born. Tell us about your business background so we have a little bit of a picture of,
Okay.
of how you got here. And
I
you live
think
in Aruba now. I mean, just fill in the gaps a little bit.
so. I was born in Suriname, which is a former Dutch colony, and my mom is from Aruba, and so we kind of pendled between Suriname and Aruba, and also the Netherlands, because they're both. Suriname used to be a colony from the Netherlands. We became independent. Aruba still is. So it's kind of in that area that I was raised. And my dad is his father's Chinese, and
Mm,
so and I have a grandparent who has ancestry from the Africa, and
mm,
then we have the ancestry from the indigenous and also the Spanish. So I have a very
mm,
diverse
mm.
background, and I believe that has shown up. Those deep
Yes,
ancient calls have
yes.
each shown up through me.
Mm,
And like I said in the beginning, at first, I never understood myself.
mhm,
I was, as a child, actually, I was always connected. I didn't need anybody. I had my dog, and I talk about which in my book, the three versions of which, until I figured out what their role in my life was, to realize that I was part of, the big quantum field, and that they came to help me to
mm,
understand that part.
mm,
But I started out, as I told my dad, said, don't send me outside. I'm going to stay right here in Suriname, because everybody used to go to the Netherlands. And then life happened, we had a
yeah,
revolution, all this stuff. And so my path, it kicked me out. I needed to go out there. And so I first went into education, and then I went into the corporate world, really training. I did the Franklin Covey training, where we really worked with teams to bring out the highest level of effectiveness and performance in people. And I was drawn to that because Dr. Stephen Covey always started from the human in the middle, the
mm,
person in the middle. He
ah,
talked always about, he said, beyond values, there's timeless principles. He talked about the big rocks that
oh,
never change.
mm,
And I thought that I was going to stay in there,
mm.
but then at some point I was like, okay, it it was beautiful, but something kept
It
calling
was
me. there's
limiting for you.
there's more, exactly. And so that has been basically the story of my life, that I didn't know exactly what I was stepping into, and I couldn't explain it exactly. So I learned to not try and explain to even the people that really love me. I didn't try to explain too much because I couldn't explain it, and
No,
then they would
it's
talk me
not
out of it.
explainable. It, we're making it up when we explain.
But I knew I wasn't strong
Yeah,
enough, because I knew I would not be able to explain it. And they were very well in words. You say I'm well in words, but it's in a different way.
yeah.
And if like somebody would to tell me now, and say, you got to speak about this, I would like, hmm. I need time to let it sit. So
Mhm,
when, like, I study the person that I am going to interview, and I allow it to sit with me, and I walk in nature, and then I write some words. So I take time before it comes through. And yeah, in this modern world, that is not
mm,
valued, because you're supposed to be able to go this.
mm, mm,
So that led me to slowly really I always kept honoring that voice inside.
mm,
That was unwavering. I didn't exactly know how, I couldn't explain it how, but I would always keep moving forward. And that's why I said the book has been writing me. And I
Mhm.
realized that for some of us that have a huge vision, the path may be longer
Mhm.
and it may look like failures, but it was just training. It
Mhm.
was just preparation for me to step into that more expansive mission, which
Mhm.
is really to, for me, like you say, it for me it is to help bring us across the that tipping point. And I talk about building sacred wealth, not
Yeah.
just wealth. No,
Yes.
it's wealth and money. That we have enough of that in the
Mhm.
old traditional conditional way that is about hustling and controlling and bullying. But we're creating a new table. That's why I call it
Mhm.
sovereign influence.
Mhm.
And in this society where we live in now, wealth is a way that we can have influence so that we can create that impact that we know in our hearts is possible, so that we can create the new businesses where people can come and feel valued,
Mhm.
where we can create the new schools where children come and we look to and we honor who they are, and we create their learning experience from not what we think they need to learn, but from where their path is taking them to, helping them discover, and that's why I said the picture was like hold them and walk with each other, and
Mhm.
it's in all the different spaces.
Mhm.
But it my life has been that journey, because if you had asked me this, even I would say even a few months ago, I could not have the words that I speak to you now were like totally different than
Mhm.
what I spoke 3 months ago.
Mhm.
And it's been allowing that to unfold and to
Yes. It's
step
still
into
happening. I can feel it. It's still happening.
it will be, but it doesn't happen until you take that step into the quote unquote unknown and stretch yourself, not totally knowing what's going to happen, what are you going to say, what is it going to turn out to be, but to know that, to learn to listen to, okay, this feels like I'm being pulled in this direction, and I'm being curious. So when my Facebook shuts down, I'm like, I don't go like, oh my God, this is blah, 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 sign from the world. No, it's like, okay, does this have any meaning? At this moment, I don't see anything. It's just kind of crazy. So I just pause it and then continue. And then little by little, new things open up and the road just keeps opening.
Mhm.
But you have to keep listening.
Mhm. But that's even for the person who is not interested in the quantum and was like me years ago, just wanted to have a better personality, meaning suffer less. Observing, listening, watching, there is no substitute. And when you were talking about uh, adding on from my book, and when it doesn't go away, you said, if we go back to when it didn't go away, when it didn't give you distance, we started adding on again.
Yeah.
And so it's that observing that allows us to step back behind the observing into the witness of the observer. And then we're not clutching like the Facebook, like, oh, I wanted it this way, or I was attached to that. It
Yeah.
helps us to let go. Do
Yeah.
you think, Ilonka, that weather is a good vehicle to understand the larger than life? Do you think that helps? Like just the symbol of weather, because for me, I'll tell you what I mean a little more.
Okay.
I might like sunny. I have friends, I'm not as susceptible to it, but I have friends who are very susceptible to dark gray days. They emotionally, they go down when it's dark. So they like sunny days. But then there's the tree in a storm. The tree had its life, the tree had its position amongst the other trees, and underground, maybe the roots are all like this, and they're all intertwined. And there's a storm, and that tree goes down. The tree maybe didn't do anything wrong, and maybe it wasn't even old, and maybe it wasn't even sick. And maybe nothing personal to that tree, because we know that trees have help each other and send out messages. They're very much like us. But the isness of the forces of the storm connected to that tree going down. And if I am my friend who maybe hates gray days, and I'm aware, oh, look at that word, hate. Maybe I could lower my energy on that a little bit. I prefer sunny days. All right, now I have a little more distance from I hate gray days. Okay, I prefer sunny days. And now I have a picnic planned, and oh my God, it's raining. I can go to, I manifested rain today. How was I not high enough in my, come on.
Mm.
You are a peon maybe in this moment, in the rain and the sun, and just being with whatever is, I think takes us to the quantum.
And that's so, I love how you say it's because you talk about it in your book. It's taking it to this moment. And that's why I always say, just remember that you are part flesh, biology, and you're part quantum. So life is going to happen. I mean, we're going to lose people. That doesn't mean that Melissa was, you could not learn your lessons or your soul's experience if Melissa didn't pass away.
No, it was absolutely correct.
It
Had to
happened.
happen, had to be that way.
Well, but what
I
if
mean,
it
that's the
didn't?
way I accept it in my heart. There is no part of me that fights with it. That's what I mean.
Exactly. But I'm saying is that it it happened because that is in the moment. It happened. But that doesn't mean that, for example, in my life, I can't learn if I don't lose someone,
Yes,
you know,
yeah.
because people will, I've had people in my life many years ago, they would tell me, oh, Ilonka, you don't have money right now because you are manifesting that, and this is what you're doing all of it. I'm like, oh, a judgment that comes through there. I'm like, and that's what I mean. It's a balance. We don't live in the quantum alone, because when we do, we're joining Melissa. Right? We and there everything is manifest because everything just is. It's all like a blob in all one moment. But we live an experience in this world where we are part biology, and that is run by different systems. So what I like about what you say, and I mean, we all say it in quite a different way so that it can reach people in a different way, is that the more that we can focus on the now and stop worrying about, but why did it happen? Did God punish me? Have I been a bad mother? No, it happened, just like my Facebook account closed. And you do ask the questions, is there anything I can learn from this?
Mhm.
Is there anything that, any learnings that I can take with me? And so it's not about questioning why it happened, didn't it happened? And how do you move forward with it? how does that now create new meaning into your life?
Mhm.
And you've allowed that experience to totally open you up. And like you say too, you have created more purpose. It's brought more purpose in your life than you had before Melissa. Now, does
So
that mean you were a
what?
bad person and you didn't
No,
get it? You didn't
no,
get it, Rosalind.
I
So
did.
life needed to punish you to take your daughter away. No,
No,
it
no,
just happened.
no. And sometimes I know I might be stepping on some toes, but sometimes the word God brings up Santa Claus, in the sense that Santa Claus, whether you had Santa Claus in your upbringing or not, Santa Claus rewards the good and punishes the bad. And God, for many people, even though they want to be New Age and they want to let it go, it's still in their belief system. And sometimes manifestation is a cover up for I got rewarded because I was good. I was in the right vibration. So we have to be very careful and observe and see what feeds the ego and what allows uh, more presence in the now. If because the ego takes us away, we're into comparison, we're so great or we're so bad. Both of those, right, take us away. How did you meet your husband?
Oh, that's a beautiful story. So I was married before when I was very young, and I think, and that too, when I was going through it, if you had asked me then, I thought I would never answer that. This because I got divorced. That was, that just it was, how do you say that? I failed in that. In that moment, that I got that feedback, but I always knew that, and that's why I told my first husband too, because we'd always been friends. We never fought, but I knew that our journey together had come to a completion. But how do you explain that to someone? So that was a very difficult period because I chose to end that marriage in the most loving way I could possibly muster up.
Mhm.
And I stayed. I was alone for 17 years, and
Mhm.
I'll never forget. This was an older friend of mine. She said we were both teachers at the time. She said, "Ilonka, promise me one thing. Says never go looking for someone. Just live your life. Do what you love. Be who you are. And if you meet someone along the way,
Mhm.
it's beautiful because then you'll meet your soul partner." And I never forgot that. So, but at one point I was like, oh my goodness, this, because it was 17 years. I said, okay, well, I guess that's it. It's not, and I had come to terms with that. I had found myself and I was like, I was getting pickier and pickier by the day because I was like, now that I've learned to know myself, it's almost like contamination. If somebody comes with their energy and was like, I don't need it anymore. And then I was doing a project with my dad, and it all happened very intuitively because I went with my dad and my aunt. We went to this concert. He was not supposed to, well, he was invited to the concert, came with some people, but they were delayed, so he came by himself. We always sit up, but because my aunt had a trouble with her knee, she was like, look, I can't climb up there. And my dad, he always likes to have total vision. So he said, okay, longer than we need to go on the bottom floor. And so I ended up sitting right next to him. And he wasn't supposed to be there because
Mhm.
he was waiting for his friends. And I came there and I said, are those seats taken? And he said, yes, I'm waiting for my friends. And then my aunt said, but they're not there right now. And so he looked at her and said, you're right, come and sit here. And it
Mhm.
was from that moment that we just felt the connection.
My
And
goodness.
it was really like it all happened very fast, and it was after 17 years being alone, and really have come to terms that it's okay. I don't mind being in this world by myself because it's allowed me to be there for others in ways that I would have never been, because then you pay attention to, because I never had children of my own, but I've been the mother of so many children that just didn't biologically come through me. But that's how we met. And
And who asked for the number first? How did you like make a date with the person sitting next to you?
oh, it was business. He did. And I looked at him and said, no, let's talk business. That I'm willing to do, So because I was working on a project that, if you're interested in the project, I like the idea that you're an engineer, because he's an inventor. Let's talk business. But he had seen, when he says, is that when he saw me, he knew at that moment that I was going to be the person that he was going to marry. And I'm like,
Wow.
are you absolutely out of your mind? Because I had come to the point, I am not getting married again. Been that, done that. I love being on my own. So, and that is also surrendering to what is that, what shows up in that moment, and allowing yourself, myself, to be led forward. And yeah, that's how we met, and we've been together since. It's I think because we've been on two continents for the last 7 years, living as a couple, but through life circumstances. And it's been like I write about it in the book too, is that sometimes when we choose to be there for the other person too, because he grew up in a world where most of us grew up in some kind of lack. You've experienced some kind of lack, either not enough money, or your parents didn't love you enough, or something like that. And he grew up in a family that just, his father, from when he was little, he always told us that you can do and be anything
Mm,
you want, anything you touch. From when he was like 11 years old, he would he would go to the bank, because his father, he always recognized there was something special in him.
mm,
So, and he had never experienced loss.
mm,
And so when he met me, he did, not through us personally, but because of the story with my dad, who suffered from severe dementia. And that took us on a pathway that it tested everything,
mhm,
losing everything.
mhm.
But that's when it's not to say like, okay, I do it any day again, but I can look back now and say, I am no longer who I was
Yeah.
back then when I
Yeah.
thought I was there.
But isn't that a clue to you were not there? Because and when I would see alcoholics, if they came in and said, any day, I have to do my program because I could go south any day, versus I knew they would be okay. But the one who comes in and says, I got it, I will never take a drink, I'm there, watch out.
Yeah, but it's not even like, for me, it wasn't like, oh, I'm there, but it's this sense of, okay, I'm good.
Ah, that's different.
I'm
That's different.
good.
Yeah.
That's what I
Yeah.
meant. So it's not about being there.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's like you realize that,
This
you
is
know,
so good. Thank
yeah,
you.
I'm
Yes.
this is good.
I
It's
appreciate this.
never thinking that there would be more,
More. Yes. No, I
that
get it
there's
now.
more
Yeah.
depth and more
Yes.
breadth,
Yeah.
that was possible for me. And that's the thing that I think is so important, is not to compare ourselves with others, because we all have a unique soul mission.
Mhm.
People sometimes look at me and go, Ilonka, you are so successful. But I know that for them, it's perfect that they stop there. That is they are living their life and being who they are. For me, there was more, it was more depth, you know.
Mhm.
And the beauty of it is that be, I am very grateful that I was more aware of me being part of this greater soup of life, because I got the messages
Mhm.
that yes, you're going to have some tough hurdles still, but just hold on,
Mm.
because I have always been able to see the end.
Yes. Wow.
And it's only that the end has become bigger and bigger
Yes.
and wider and deeper
Yes.
and
That's
more
so true.
concrete.
Yes.
But I always knew. And so I've had, like, I remember one time when it was really during the tough times with my dad, because he had dementia and he had a very powerful position. And so they took advantage of him.
Mm.
They cleaned his bank account. We lost our homes. You know, it a whole horrible story that you think is worth for a movie. And when we had come out, I met someone who could see,
Mm.
you have people that they can see into the future.
Mhm.
And she said, Ilonka, she did it with some cards and stuff. And she said, Ilonka, normally this card would mean that, there's a lot of bad things still happening. But she said, the way it worked, that it all came out says, just know that you're still gonna have a layer deeper that's gonna happen. But then you guys are gonna come out on the other end.
Mhm.
And just know, I took it in, I registered, and I continued. And then when the deeper layer happened, because that was the time that we actually, we were, my dad, 2 weeks before he passed, they evicted us. We got eviction notice from his own home because
My.
supposedly he had sold his house.
Mm.
And just that's when that memory came back. And I remembered, oh my gosh,
Mm.
that's what she was talking about. And
Mhm.
that helped me to deal with the drama of the moment,
Mhm.
knowing, okay, it's not to, I had to acknowledge the pain, the
Yes.
emotions,
Sure.
because you're going through hell. But at the same time, I knew that this was temporary. And and once we get that embodied experience that, okay, yes, there's drama here right now, but that's not who I am. There is that something that I'm being pulled to. And that's the soul message.
Yes.
And
So,
that, yeah,
Ilanka, some people in this community are retired.
yeah,
They did important things like maybe they were in business, maybe they were nurses, maybe they were teachers, many professionals. And at first, retirement sounds like freedom. And then, partly because of how society views older people, you're kind of ignored. And a lot of people, and some people, feel less than coming toward them, because society doesn't admire wisdom and age and so on. So I wonder if you have anything to say to someone who doesn't feel a soul mission, who cares deeply about humanity and some of, as you say, the bullying that goes on in the world hurts them. They are not unfeeling, but they don't have a job. They don't necessarily have volunteer work that matters yet. Perhaps they have a garden they enjoy. How can they be part from where they are to feel the quantum without saying, oh, well, you can do this thing and become acceptable, like you can join this volunteer or that. Do you know where is the quantum for them? Do you know what I'm asking?
yeah. It's a beautiful question, and I think the answer is different for everyone. or the outcome is different for everyone. Um, but I do think that there are underlying principles, and that is, and there's no, because there's some of us that maybe like, if I look at my mom, she's retired and she just wants to enjoy her life. She said, and we'll look at the news together, and she'll be, saying, she always says, Ilonka, I always tell you, it's the young people that are going to make the difference. And just me having the conversation with her, making so that her words are valuable. That may be all that's needed.
So
Sometimes
maybe if these people do the reverse and look into the eyes of the person who's taking their shopping cart and adding it up, maybe if they show up as presence, whether it's the garden or the shopping, that is the connection that brings us to the quantum.
it's because it's through our, that's why I say that when I say we're biology, when I, um, because if you look at the world, because I used to live in the US, lived there for 20 years. And at some point I was like, there was the energy of the stress was so felt and visceral that I've been living here on the island of Aruba with my mom. First it was a choice, and then it didn't become a choice, and then I was like, but I think I like it here better than there. But that's where it is. The societies, especially our Western societies, because we have we have disconnected ourselves more from the quantum, and we are now only, and now is a big word because now it could be years and lifetimes, but it's still young. We are starting to integrate that. But the quantum means also, you know let's take the example that you say, being at the checkout and smiling to the person and saying, you look tired today. And the person goes like, wow, yes, I am
I
tired. I've
was
been
seen.
standing on
I
my
was
feet
seen.
all day.
Mhm.
I see you. I
Mm,
see your heart. And all of a sudden the connection, it comes, and I leave that moment uplifted because I meant something in somebody's heart. And
mhm,
that person, you don't know what you did to that person,
mhm,
but that connection elevated you both. And
mhm,
the more we can find those simple moments
mhm,
of making the best of that moment, and that present moment, because present moments add up to a lifetime.
mhm,
And when we stop rushing through them, you know and some of us, even at retirement, look at you, you feel called to work in groups, you do podcasts. Now that doesn't mean that if I don't feel called to do that, that there's something wrong with me.
mhm,
It's just that I have a different, my soul wants something different for me. However, if you do feel that in you and you deny that, that's where you get in trouble.
mhm,
So it's really, it's a big word, because it's not listening and hearing something, but
mhm,
it's being more in touch with your feeling, that because the soul gives us a feeling,
mhm,
and it's through human connection that we can see. That's why most of the namaste says, I see the God in you that is in me. Those are big, big, big words, but what it means is that you and I are talking from heart to heart right now. I couldn't prepare for this conversation, and neither could you.
right.
But we know that in having this authentic conversation, we may just reach some hearts out there that will leave their place more elevated, more with more joy, and
Mhm,
feeling that sense of belonging. And
mhm,
I call it, it's about balance, harmony, and joy. Joy is one of the most powerful. Joy and gratitude are, I call them cousins and sisters, because they go together. Because I leave our conversation of today feeling so grateful
mhm,
that I met you, that I'm able to have these deep conversations with you. And that makes me a better person. And it may help me if it is my path to do something bigger in the world. You added to that. And so,
Everybody who comforts you, who maybe even brings the food at the restaurant to you and your husband, and the dishwasher in the back of the restaurant. We put these labels on who's important and who's not, but it's all the whole, like you keep bringing out. It's the embodiment in the body and personality and the whole together.
and I would add also because there's a lot of conditioning, so we've grown older, then, I mean, who am I to go write a book?
Mm,
Because
mm, mm,
we have friends that she wrote a book at 82, and it was her soul's calling that led her to do that. Now, does it mean we all have to write a book? No. But if you feel called
mhm.
to that, if something feels that it's nudging at you, listen to that feeling and don't let people talk you out of it,
Right.
because that's where we get into keeping ourselves smaller.
And the limited, yes,
Exactly.
absolutely. I want to end with this one word. Are you old enough to remember the word agape?
Yes.
Mm.
Yes. Michael
It's
Beckett.
not a current word. You don't hear that, I don't think. I don't think I've heard it in 5 years. And then in 5 years, it was probably a yoga Zen bookstore. But for those who don't know the word, my definition of it is a love that's bigger than personal love.
Mhm.
It's like namaste, where the soul in me sees the soul in you.
Mhm.
And I feel it's a missing, and it fits the quantum because it includes personal love, but it's very different from personal love. And
Yeah.
you could dislike what somebody does and even their personality qualities and find that agape love for because they're human, because they're alive.
Yeah.
And uh, that's an opener because so many spiritual pathways talk about love, but it's not, or helping, love and helping. And then people misuse the helping, like, I'm going to give you what you don't even know you want because I want to help you. I mean,
Mm.
you see a lot of that with in mourning. People give you what they think you should have, and they would feel better giving you, but they haven't checked in.
Yeah.
Is there something? Can I be with you? Can I buy your groceries? But somebody suggested, come in and change my sheets. I don't want you to come in and change my sheets, right? So we're talking about the dimensions, and I think it still comes down to a willingness to observe ourselves and check in. And then we can be more open to extending and not living from limitation and not living from conditioning or imagined unworthiness. We have the ability to say, is that truth or is that something else?
Yeah.
And you do that in your book so well when you have the pointers for the ways to get there. And when we're starting out as seekers, these are very, very useful to find our own blueprint. And if you've been punched and given something else, then you can start with your heart, with opening rather than defending and closing up, because that's always an option. Oh, Ilonka, you are the best. I love being with you. It's such a treat. You are such a gift. And by the way, everyone, Araba, who's a beloved member of this community, many people know her. She's esteemed, respected, loved, and we both have close relationships with Araba. So it shows us that we're all connected, even though we didn't know it.
Exactly. Thank you, Rosalind. It's such a beautiful experience being here with you and with your listeners. And I love how you really focus on making that what seems so vast and so unreachable, to bring it down to practical terms and how can we in practical ways honor that in our lives and see that and recognize that in our lives.
Thank you
So
for seeing that in me because it is what releases me from suffering. You asked me in our interview, and I didn't get to answer. You asked me what is the quantum in quantum belonging in that chapter of the other book. And it's for me, just for me, I'm not telling anybody it's a blueprint, but for me, it's the stepping back out of the personal. And I always belong to life because I'm alive. And that means everyone else does too. And that's where I get the belonging that's bigger than my mind could allow.
exactly. That's why I love it. I love how because you talked about changing the world. It's like, no, it's perfect. It is perfect because it reminds us that even when we don't think we belong, we belong. We were always there. We were in the room and
Yeah.
we are part of the room and outside of the room. My husband loves, I love when he says this, don't think with outside of the box, think without the box.
Oh,
Because there is no box.
oh, I love that.
Isn't
It's
that
the
beautiful?
personal mind, the conditioned mind, the person that thinks there's
Because
a
the moment you think out of
create
the box,
it. We
the
create
box
it.
there.
Oh,
He
I love
said,
it.
there is no box.
Tell him thank you.
Life as if there's no box there.
Tell him thank you
I will,
from
I
all
will.
of us. He was here with us today.
Yes, he was.
Bye bye. Thank you
Bye
so much,
bye.
Ilonka.
Until
This is
next
wonderful.
time.